I read these books, part of me gets so nervous, and I don't know what part of that of me is yet. Like, it's just because every time I post something on these topics that gets scrubbed from the internet, like, they always get taken down or always get banned or scrubbed from something. So it's like this day and age, you never know what you can post and what you can't, you know? So this one's definitely on the line of walking on eggshells for sure. Um, so I came across this page release titled The Merovingian Dynasty, Satanic Bloodline of the Antichrist and the False Prophet. And I want to read some passages from it because I've never gone over it before, and it just had some very interesting key vocabulary that caught my attention. So that's what I'm going to do in today's call. Need I remind you all that nothing that I read is that of my own personal opinion, perspective, or viewpoints, or religious beliefs, or anything of that nature. This information does not come from me. I'm simply just a bringer of information, almost like a messenger, where inside the Library of Awakening over the past couple of years, we have collected a vast collection of books and texts and documents and all kinds of things over the past couple of years. And now unleashing the Library of Awakening to the general public, these are just some of the documents and the books that are within inside our private community. And that's here in an attempt of what we're trying to do is just bring this information to the masses. What you all do with that information is, of course, entirely up to you. So don't take what it is that I'm reading for face value. Matter of fact, always don't believe anything on the internet, right? Research for yourselves what you find to be truthful or not using your own discernment and judgment. Always assume nothing to be true. So with that being said, let's dive into this. This is a 19-page script by this person here. Introduction to Nephilim, the cult of the Black Virgin, identity of the false Christ, the sacred marriage, the bloodline from hell, William Cooper and the three bears, the false prophets, Michael the counterfeit archangel, and the Roman dragon. Interesting, right? Let's see what it has to say. I apologize in advance if I stumble on my words or completely freaking demolish some vocabulary, like probably going to absolutely butcher some of the pronunciations in this, but we'll try our best. I'm only human. The following pages are selected portions of a longer report, which is an expose of the astrological signs that will be used by false teachers to validate the credentials of the Antichrist and false prophet. Many of the current projections concerning the identities of these personages are in fact disinformation calculated to deceive the masses. Adding to the general ignorance, there is a little information, coming forth in the way of exposure of the Merovingian dynasty as the satanic bloodline from which the Antichrist and false prophet will come. Whatever lip service is paid to this subject is usually tainted with enough misinformation to keep the masses of Christians ignorant of the truth. Wow. What an opener. Okay. Yet the Bible presents specific evidence concerning the identities of the Antichrist and false prophet, the mark of the beast, mystery of Babylon the Great, and other entities that will be imperative for God's elect to recognize during the tribulation period. We believe that New Agers already know the identity of the false Christ, the false prophet, and various other tribulation counterfeits through their study of astrology as interpreted by a large body of occult tradition and the current propaganda proliferating through New Age publications. Sorry, I lost my place. There's no reason that Christians, given the same information available to New Agers and aided by a right understanding of Scripture, cannot discern and rightly interpret this end of time enigma. The alternative is to be at the mercy of a massive disinformation campaign that is being conducted within the Christian community by the same New Age network, which is planning the destruction of Christianity and return of mankind to the paganism of the ancient world. The term Merovingian is said to derive from Merovi, who was king of the Franks from 447 to 458 AD. Despite recent claims that the Merovingian Franks were sired by Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene and therefore divine, the legend of King Merovi, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, conceals the true origins of the Merovingian race in a remote antiquity according to the legend, as explained in the bloodline of the Holy Grail. I'm assuming that that's the one by Lawrence Gardner, but it doesn't say. Merovi had two fathers, King Claudian and a strange beast of the sea. Despite the carefully listed genealogies of his time, the heritage of Merovius was strangely obscured in the monastic annals. Although the rightful son of Claudian, he was nonetheless said by the historian Priscus to have been sired by an arcane sea creature, the Bestia Neptunus. The Sicambrian Franks, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, the Sicambrian Franks, from whose female line the Merovingians emerged, were associated with Grecian Arcadia before migrating to the Rhineland. As we've seen, they called themselves the Numic, people of the New Covenant, just as the Essenes, Qumran, had once been known. Just how the Essenes of Qumran had once been known. It was the Arcadian legacy that was responsible for the mysterious sea beast, the Bestia Neptunus, as symbolically defined in the Merovingian ancestry. The relevant sea lord was King Pallas, a god of old Arcadia. His predecessor was the great Oceanus. The immortal sea lord was said to be ever incarnate in a dynasty of ancient kings, whose symbol was a fish, as was the traditional symbol of Jesus. Oh, I was correct. He is referencing Lawrence Gardner here. In that book that he was referencing, The Bloodline of the Holy Grail. The Bestia Neptunus was worshipped in classical antiquity as the Roman god Neptune and as Poseidon in Greek mythology. Neptune was the mythological god of the sea who is said to have founded Atlantis, which is the pagan version of the pre-flood civilization, which God judged in Genesis 7. Revelation 13:1, which identifies the Antichrist system as the beast that rises out of the sea, becomes crystal clear upon discovery that a demonic bloodline which exists today that was originally sired by a mysterious sea beast, the Bestia Neptunus. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his 10 horns crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. The beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. Revelations 13:1, 2. Merovius derives from the French words mer, meaning sea, and ver, meaning werewolf or dragon. The book of Revelation informs us the dragon is the devil Satan. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Revelation 12:9. Bloodline of the Holy Grail, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and the Da Vinci Code were popular books marketed for mass consumption and, as such, were propaganda tools which concealed the true origins of the Merovingian race. For their esoteric allusion to the Merovingians' legendary progenitor, King Merovi, having been sired by a mysterious beast of the sea, is a claim of literal satanic descent. The demonic origins and history of the Merovingian dynasty, also known as the Dragon Dynasty, in honor of the great red dragon of Revelation 12 and 13, were revealed in less available insider sources such as Gardner's Realm of the Ringlords and Kenneth Grant, and the Merovingian mythos published by Dragon Key Press. The ancient people of Tuatha De Danann were the supernatural tribe of the pre-archaic agriculture goddess Danae of Argos, or perhaps of the Aegean mother goddess Danu, but their true name, rendered in its older form, was Tade de Anu, such that they were the people or tribe of Anu, the great sky god of the Anunnaki. Might have to highlight some of this stuff to come back and revisit. This is like the stuff that you can't just read a paragraph on and then just skip over. Like you got to go back and like start typing stuff on other sources. The Nephilim were banished to the center of the earth for disobeying God by mating with the daughters of men and teaching them the forbidden arts. In this publication, the Nephilim have been identified as the fathers of the Merovingians. The Merovingian race was sired by a water beast known as the Quinator. This Quinator took the form of a sea bull. Crowley's personal seal was of a sea goat. Grant, writing of Crowley's seal of the beast, says the beast is the sea goat or amphibious monster, identical with the Cthulhu, the Quinator or bull of the deep. Grant writes as a footnote, the waters under the earth, home of the ancestors or subconscious atavisms of the race. Is this a reference to the race of the Grail? Merovingian claims of angelic ancestry may seem too bizarre to be true. However, as mentioned above, such a race of demonic origin is found in Scripture. And it came to pass when man began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of man and bare them children. The same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on earth. And it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found the grace in the eyes of the Lord. Genesis 6, verse 1 through 7. The Hebrew word Nephil is properly translated the fallen ones and referred to the offspring of fallen angels who mated with human women on Mount Hermon in the land of Canaan. It may be that after in Genesis 6:4 it refers to a second invasion of the fallen angels after the flood, which would explain why the Israelites found giants or Nephilim in Canaan upon entry into the promised land. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who came of the Nephilim. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. In Numbers 13:33, the Hebrew Masoretic text. Some commentators have speculated that the Nephilim of Numbers 13 belonged to a second eruption of fallen angels, since the earlier Nephilim had been destroyed in the flood. And they see an allusion to this in Genesis 6:4, where it states that there were Nephilim in the earth in those days, and also after that when the sons of God came into the daughters of men. Could it be that after that was a reference to the Nephilim found in Canaan during Israelite entry into the land? If so, it could be explained why the Lord commanded the total extermination of the Canaanites, as he had earlier ordered their annihilation. As he had earlier ordered the near annihilation of the human race. Sodom and Gomorrah were Canaanite settlement that practiced cult prostitution in conjunction with their fertility rites. Jude 7 suggests that the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah were so depraved that fornication with angels was practiced, as the record of Genesis 19 also attests. The Canaanite territory of northern Israel was later occupied by the tribe of Dan, whose worship of Baal, or Pan, involved such fertility rites as at Mount Hermon, also called Mount Sion. The Merovingians are the offspring of the tribe of Dan, which intermarried with the Canaanite Tatha di Denan, also known as the dragon lords of Anu, because they were the offspring of the fallen angels, or the Anunnaki. Through the work of Sir Lawrence Gardner, we discovered that the Sumer in the Old Irish language means dragon. He writes, it is also reckoned that the subsequent culture of the region, phonetically called Sumerian, pronounced Shumerian, was actually Sidhumerian or Shemerian. This case is now considerable since the early ringlords of Scythia, Tuatha De Danann, king tribe, were actually called the Sumer. During the days of the biblical great Exodus, a group separated from Moses and went to the north. This group was the tribe of Dan. Millions went and settled in the European and Scandinavian areas. From there, they spread out to other parts of the world, conquering countries, spreading their Anunnaki seed and replacing the conquered people's traditions with their own serpent culture. The tribe of Dan, said to have separated from Moses, may have been among the mixed multitude that left Egypt with the Israelites in Exodus 12:38 and fell a-lusting in Numbers 11:4. In these verses, the term mixed multitude may in fact describe the hybrid genetic composition of this group. The Nephilim were the fallen angels cast out of heaven after rebelling against God. The word Nephal means to fall and means the fallen one. Their leader was also a fallen son of God, Lucifer. The Nephilim came from a class of angels called the Watchers. Not all Watchers fell. The souls derived from the union of the Nephilim and mortal women were called the mixed multitude. When God dispersed the northern tribes of Israel for their wickedness, the tribe of Dan migrated to Greece and later to France and the British Isles, where they established pagan priesthoods and royal dynasties of the demonic bloodline. The Tuatha De Danann, or dragon lords of Anu, before settling in Ireland from about 800 BC, were the Black Sea princess of Scythia known as Ukraine. Like the original dynastic pharaohs, they traced their descent from the great Pendragons of Mesopotamia. From them sprang the kingly lines of the Irish Bruthnai and the Picts of Scotland, Calediana, probably butchering all this information. So again, or not this information, this vocabulary, excuse me. Caldania, or Caldonia, I think that's how you say it, Caldonia. In Wales, they found the royal house of Gwynedd, I'll call it Gwynedd. While in Cornwall in the southwest of England, they were the sacred gentry known as Pictsidie. So from a single cast of the original blood royal, whether known as the Sangreal or Albigenus or Ringlords, we discover many of the descriptive terms which sit at the very heart of the popular folklore. For here, in this one noble race, we have the elves, fairies, and pixies, not beguiling little folk, but distinguished kings and queens of the dragon succession. In the Psalter of Cashel, it states that the Tuatha De Danann ruled in Ireland for about 2 centuries and were highly skilled in architecture and other arts from their long residence in Greece. The Tuatha De Danann were the descendants of the Danaus, the son of Belus, They went with his 50 daughters to Argos, the home of his ancestros idol. In Irish legends, the Titu Adi Dinan, who were considered to be demigods, were said to have possessed a grail-like vessel. These teachers of wisdom were the founders of the Druidic priesthood. The progenitors of Tuatha Dé Danann, the dragon lords of Anu, or the Anunnaki, still communicate with mankind. However, since the arrival and ascendance of Christianity, they must now resort to various disguises to camouflage their true identity. Among the myriad guises are apparitions of Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, gods and goddesses of ancient cultures, and angels, dead saints, or famous people, extraterrestrials, whatever life form is appropriate to obtain acceptance and a foothold in a given culture or subculture. Though communications between the space races and our own continued, they were severely curtailed and went underground. The Danan, a collective convention named to avoid confusion, always jealous of their technology and secrets, were demonized by the various religions that guarded the traditions established by them long ago. Since corrupted by man through ignorance, from active persecution by the Church of contactees between their race and ours in the Dark Ages, man progressed to the point that he dealt with the problem through ridicule or derisation by such archetypes. Bedtime fables and sanitized surrogates, such as fairies and the boogeyman and Santa Claus. When they interact with man, it is through their dreams and riddles, and a variety of identical gods in all cultures, seeming to prefer inspiring from behind the scenes to any kind of direct communication. When overt contact is necessary, they assume the guise of the Virgin Mary, the Corn Mother, angels, kachinas, or whatever is appropriate for that culture. There is a strong circumstantial evidence for this race's continual intervention on a number of levels in man's development, from the crude physical to the artistic and scientific and esoteric. They cover their tracks with hypnosis and probably drugs or some other high technology to cloud the memories of their visitants. Their rituals and ways of life derive from a worship of harmony of nature and the mastery of the mind of man over it. Yeah, I definitely cannot create a TikTok short on this book. This shit will get taken down real quick. There has never been a time in man's history that these people were absent, and nothing occurring in today's UFO and abduction phenomena has not been recorded throughout. The only difference today is that there is much more evidence of the encounters, and contact is becoming increasingly visible. The mythical record, the world over, speaks of the golden age in which man and the gods, angels, freely and openly interacted, and all such records have prophesied that a time would come when a new golden age would occur, all former secrets being revealed. During the 1st century AD, Alexandria in Egypt was a veritable hotbed of mystical activity. Excuse me. During the 1st century AD, Alexandria in Egypt was a veritable hotbed of mystical activity, a crucible in which, according to the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Judaic, Mithraic, Zoroastrian, or Pythagorean, Hermetic, and non-Platonic doctrines suffused the air and combined with innumerable others. It was in the early centuries of the Christian era that the ancient worship of the Mother Goddess was introduced to Christianity by Jews who had fled Israel and embraced Alexandrian Neoplatonism, which is just a rehash of Greek paganism. The Neoplatonists are Greek philosophers who lived long enough after Plato to have lost the name of Platonists, as far as modern scholars are concerned. Although they were intellectual disciples of Plato and considered themselves Platonists, in ancient times mankind worshipped the hosts of heaven, believing them to be gods and goddesses who ruled the pre-flood civilization of Atlantis. Ancient man believed that the constellation Virgo was the great mother goddess who ruled over a golden age called Lemuria, which preceded Atlantis. This astrological tradition was transmitted to successive pagan cultures through the ages of mankind. Some of the mythological representations of Virgo are Nana, or Eve, or Ishtar, Demeter, Hecate, Themis, Hera, Astrea, Diana, Cybele, Isis, Fortuna, Aragon, Cybele, and the Virgin Mother. All representations of the Great Mother in some form. She who existed before the masculine gods of the ancient classical mythology. The Greek adaptation of Virgo was Demeter, whose daughter Kor was abducted by Plato, the god of the underworld. Kor would remain the Dark Lord's queen, and her name would no longer be Kor, the maiden, but Persephone, she who is to be feared. The Alexandrian Jews who worshipped the Greek goddess Kora managed to convert their pagan goddess worship into the theologically respectable tradition called Gnosticism by giving the goddess the trappings of Christianity. Although they worshipped her as the Holy Virgin, or virginity, has an altogether different connotation to Gnostics than it does to Christians. Another important feature of the Gnostic tradition of Epiphany is that it is really a feminine holiday. St. Clement of Alexandria mentioned that the followers of the Gnostic master Basilides feasted on the day of the baptism. Excuse me, pause. I'll take a second real fast, an intermission. For those of you all who are listening who might have tuned in late, we are reading a document on the it's a tongue twister every time I say it. We are reading a document on the Merovingian dynasty, a satanic bloodline of the Antichrist. This book, of course, and the information that is within it is not my own personal opinion or beliefs. Make sure that you all are going out there and you're doing your own personal research. I'm here just in an attempt to bring you guys books, documents, and information that goes otherwise unnoticed. What you all do with that information is entirely up to you. Always do your own personal research and use your own discernment. Never take what is written or what is said to you with face value, and always go and do your own research to come to your own conclusions, okay? So I just wanted to reiterate that, what we're reading real fast. If you guys are on TikTok, do me a favor, give that heart or thumbs up. We do appreciate the love and the support. And if you guys are on a YouTube, you guys can see this book, this document that we're reading. You all can always find these documents and these books inside the private CyberX Discord within the Library of Awakening section. Hundreds, if not honest to God, thousands of books just like this one, many more others, ancient texts that you literally couldn't even find on the internet because they've been scrubbed from existence, all within inside the private community. Would love to have you on the team. Let's continue to read thoroughly through this. We're on page 5 out of 19. And I'm not going to lie, my throat chakra is low-key starting to exhaust itself, as it is almost 6 p.m. my time. And I've been talking all day. I've had meetings today. I've been on Zoom calls. I've made some recordings. I've been on the phone quite literally since I woke up this morning. So we'll see how many more pages I can get through, maybe 1 or 2. But with that being said, let's continue and see where we end up. Another important feature of the Gnostic tradition of Epiphany is that it is really a feminine holiday. St. Clement of Alexandria mentioned that the followers of the Gnostic master, Basilides, feasted on the day of the baptism and kept a long vigil before it. Epiphanius Epiphanius, 305 to 402, gave us a detailed description of how the Alexandrian Gnostics celebrated the Epiphany. They did this in the sanctuary of the maiden goddess Kor, whom they equated with the image of the Holy Virgin. At midnight, they descended with torches into the crypt of the temple and brought the wooden statue of Kor forth in procession. The maiden was represented naked and sitting with crosses marked on her brow, her hands and her knees. The statue was carried 7 times around the central shrine and was then retired to the crypt once more. The Gnostics said that on this day, Kor the Virgin gave birth to the divine principle known as the Christ. It is from the feminine, intuitive consciousness and feeling nature that the messianic power of individuated consciousness is born. Well, shit, that was a deep sentence right there. Thus, the human nature of Jesus, where every man is transformed into the divine and spiritual nature by the holy female power, the Holy Spirit, and the initiation rite of baptism. Those egotistical men aren't going to want to hear that sentence. Holy crap. It is important to note that heretic Basileus was a Gnostic Jew of Alexandria, as was his contemporary on the ark, heretic Valentinus. It was in the Gnostic culture of Alexandria that the Mother Goddess evolved into Mary Magdalene. Ian Begg wrote in The Cult of the Black Virgin that many of the finest Gnostic writings are of Alexandrian inspiration or origin. Alexandria is also the main source of Gnostic workings linking Jesus with Mary Magdalene. According to this tradition, it was through the Magdalene, rather than through Peter and the male apostles, that Jesus transmitted his secret doctrine. And their endeavors to relocate the center of Christianity in Alexandria, Egypt, the Gnostics misrepresent Mary Magdalene as a native of the Magdalene in Egypt, which they associate with Magdal. There is no necessity to endeavor to crowbar Mary Magdalene into a Galilean setting, for there are other intriguing alternatives for her place of origin. Although there was no Magdala in Judea in her day, there was a Magdalum in Egypt, just across the border, which was probably the Migdal mentioned in Ezekiel. There was a large and flourishing Jewish community in Egypt at that time, which particularly centered on the great seaport of Alexandria, a seething cosmopolitan melting pot of many races, nationalities, and religions, and perhaps where the Holy Family had fled to escape the depredations of Herod's men. There is no mention of Magdal in the book of Ezekiel. However, the prophet Jeremiah reproved the apostate Jews who took upon residence in Magdal in Egypt for disobeying the Lord, who had commanded them to go with their countrymen to Babylon. The prophet Jeremiah specifically admonished the Jews in Egypt for their worship of the Mother Goddess. Here it is apparent that the worship of the Mother Goddess, Virgo, and the appellation of Isis spread from Egypt into Israel, and from Israel to the centers of the Roman Empire. The cult of Isis was widespread in Egypt of the dynastic period. From Egypt it spread northwards to Phoenicia, Syria, and Palestine, to Asia Minor, to Cyprus, Rhodes, Crete, Samos, and other islands in the Aegean, to many parts of mainland Greece, Corinth, Argos, Thessaly amongst them, to Malta and Sicily, and finally to Rome. In the 1st century BC, Isis was perhaps the most popular goddess in the Eternal City, from which her cult spread to the furthest limits of the Roman Empire, including Britain. Her only rival was Mithras. In fact, the worship of the Virgin Mary in the Roman Catholic Church, along with the entire body of the Catholic tradition, can be traced to worship of Isis in Egypt. Immaculate is Our Lady Isis, the very terms applied afterwards to that personage, the Virgin Mary, who succeeded to her form, titles, symbols, rites, and ceremonies. Thus her devotees carried into the new priesthood the former badges of their profession, the obligation to celibacy, the tonsure, and the supplice, omitting, unfortunately, the frequent oblations prescribed by the ancient creed. The Black Virgins, so highly reverenced in certain French cathedrals, proved, when at last critically examined, basalts figures of Isis. In 412 AD, Cyril of Alexandria became the Bishop of Alexandria, and Isis unveiled. H.P. Blavatsky wrote, Cyril, the worship or Bishop of Alexandria. Let me reread that. In Isis Unveiled, which I'm assuming is a book by H.P. Blavatsky, wrote Cyril, the Bishop of Alexandria, had openly embraced the cause of Isis, the Egyptian goddess, and had anthropomorphized her into Mary and the Mother of God. During his bishopric, Cyril wrote passionately and voluminously against the Nestorian heresy, and was largely instrumental in having it condemned at the Council of Ephesus in 431. The Third Ecumenical Council was held at Ephesus in Greece, whose philosophy and culture were, like Egypt, derived from the occult traditions of the pre-flood civilization. The Council of Ephesus condemned the Nestorian heresy, but approved the veneration of the Virgin Mary as Theotokos, the God-bearer, or Mother of God. The Nestorians and the Nestorians were exiled to the Persian Empire and became the Assyrian Orthodox Church of the East. However, in what appears to have been a classical delicatal operation, the path had been cleared for Mary to be transformed from the Mother of God to a deity in the image of the Mother Goddess Isis, who shared in the divinity of her son, Horus. In the article of Mariology, Carey Mills posited that the issue derived the great Nestorian controversy, and how it was really the doctrine of Mary rather than the doctrine of Christ. Catholics claim that no serious question was raised about Mary's sinlessness after the Council of Ephesus in AD 431, which declared that Mary was to be God-bearer, Mother of God. What is not explained is the reason why no questions, according to the RCC, were raised about that after the council. It is clearly documented that Nestorius, Bishop of Constantinople, was declared a heretic and exiled because he rejected the popular title given to Mary, the Mother of God. The Church would claim that Nestorius made it appear in his emphasis on the reality of the humanity of Jesus that Christ was two persons or two sons, the Son of Mary and the Son of God. Interestingly, the writings of Ignatius and disciple of the Apostle John and Bishop of Antioch declared a similar thought. Mary is presented as Mother of Christ according to his human nature, as the Heavenly Father is his Father according to his divine nature to the Ephesians. With that same purpose to refute heretical thinking, and yet he is not declared a heretic. Nestorius was declared a heretic based on the power of politics and his denial of Mary as a God-bearer, not on Christology. Nestorius was refuting heretical ideas that Christ was not flesh, only deity. In his autobiography, he insisted that he did not oppose the title of God-bearer because he denied the Godhead of Christ, but rather to distinguish that Jesus was a genuine human being born with a body and soul. He insisted that calling Mary the God-bearer or Mother of God was to declare that God could be born of a woman. Parents pre-exist their children, yet Mary, a mortal woman, could not pre-exist God. In fact, the paradox remains clear to this day that Jesus was the son of Mary's pre-existed Mary. Yet, with the reign of the Constantine, the church had gained power, and so no serious question should be raised outwardly without the backing of the majority, once that power had been exercised on Nestorius. That was a deep ass paragraph right there. That's some shit you gotta revisit and get to the bottom of. Even the trappings of monasticism. Hold on. Let me get some water. Even the trappings of monasticism, that found a home in Roman Catholicism, originated in the asceticism. Holy crap, these words are insane. Catholicism originated in the asceticism that was prevalent in Egypt, dating back to Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes, or Thoth, a demigod from the pre-flood civilization of Atlantis, became the prototype of the hermit monk. The Council of Nicaea in 321 AD may have been another dialectical operation. Dialectical. Stumbled on that word earlier. Might have been another dialectical operation. There, Saint Athanasius in 296 to 373 AD, as Bishop of Alexandria, valiantly combated the Arian hearsay which challenged the divinity of Jesus Christ. However, Athanasius also used that council as an opportunity to incorporate in the canons, the church, the requirement of celibacy for Christian leaders. Following his victory over the Heresiarch. Let's try that. Following his victory over the Heresiarch, Arius and the Arians, Athanasius, traveled throughout Europe promoting monasticism and asceticism, probably butchering the shit out of all of that. He is credited with introducing monasticism. That's going to continue to give me. I don't know why that word's fucking with my brain. Like my left and right brain are conflicting with each other when I read that freaking word, specifically to the Romans and Germans. In the Gnostic theology of Athanasius, I think I'm saying that name right too. Athanasius. Only ascetics were considered the bride of Christ, a pernicious teaching which influenced many devout Christians to seek Christ in the monasteries and convents. Although the religious orders had the outward appearance of a spiritual piety, they were often, however, fronts for occult as well as homosexual lesbian activity. That asceticism, this one's fucking on my brain too. The asceticism, I'm going to say asceticism because that sounds right. Asceticism. The asceticism enforced celibacy and monastic life have borne evil fruit throughout the centuries is evident in the rampant sexual provision of the Roman Catholic priesthood and hierarchy. It was through the establishment of monasteries that the Merovingian Jews, whose forefathers were the Alexandrian Gnostics, began to infiltrate and mold theology and practices of the Roman Catholic Church. Many of the popes were Merovingian monks who forced the masses of European Jews to convert to Roman Catholicism, with the result that the Church incorporated traditions from both Judaism, Talmud, and the Kabbalah. We believe it will be from the monastic movement that the false prophet of the Merovingian will rise to the prominence and power as the Antichrist's right-hand man. Trying to see when a good place is going to be to leave off. I don't want to leave off at the middle of nothing. But here's another subtitle. We just ran into another subtitle. So, Prière de Sion. I'm Googling that shit right now. Priory of Sion. Fraternal organization founded in France. Okay. We might leave off here. Let's see when the next subchapter is. Damn. The Holy Grail has virtually nothing to do with Christianity per se. Holy crap. All right, we're going to leave off there. We'll come back to this. I'm going to mark this with green, though, because I want to finish this. I want to finish this book. So we're leaving off on the Priory of Sion. And I'm going to mark it with green, so we know where to come back to. All right, I'll keep reading. I can keep reading for a little bit if you guys want me to. If you all want me to keep reading, I'll keep reading for a little bit. I feel like my freaking right brain and left brain started tripping there at the end with the freaking, what word was that? Hold on. Monasticism. 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 My brain was tripping out on that word. Let's see. I don't know. It looks like there's a lot of French in this. I don't know if I want to lock in with this one. All right, all right, all right. We'll get through this. We'll try. We'll see. Okay. The Priory of Sion. In the thorny pagan milieu of Alexandria, an Egyptian priest and magus by the name of Aramisius founded the monastic society of Ormus. The members of this society included the Therapeutae of Alexandria and the Essenes of Qumran, apostate Jews who had embraced the Neo-Platonist doctrine of the lost continent of Atlantis. Gnostics alleged that Armisius was a convert of St. Mark. However, such conversions are a common modus operandi of infiltrators with hidden agendas. As a false convert, Armisius would synthesize Christianity with the paganism of Alexandria, Egypt, and establish the monastic society, which was the original order of the Rosy Cross. According to Baron de Westerode, the founder of the Rosicrucians was one Armisius. Hopefully I'm not butchering that. Armisius, who had been converted by St. Mark to Alexandria. He purified the Egyptian rites and reconciled them with Christianity, carrying his disciples with him. He founded the Society of Ormus, or of the Light, where each member wearing a red cross. To this society, the Essenes and the Therapeutae joined themselves and conserved the Masonic secrets. The Society of Ormus would eventually relocate to Italy in around 1070 AD, moving to the territory in France owned by Godfrey de Boulogne, the first Grand Master of the Priory of Sion. Therapeutae changed its name to the Order de Sion, or Order of Sion, and the monks were given a tract of land owned by one Bernard of Clairvaux. Saint Bernard, who was the founder of the Cistercian order of the monks, also wrote of the rule of the Templars according to the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, the Society of Ormus, which became the Order de Sion, or Order of Sion, then became the Priory of Sion. The priory documents imply that an abbey existed by 1100, and housed an order of the name, the Order of Sion, which may have been formed earlier. It is known that in 1070, 29 years before the First Crusade, a specific band of monks from Calabria in southern Italy arrived in the vicinity of the Ardennes forest, part of Godfrey de Boulogne's domains, according to Gerard de Sade. This band of monks was led by an individual called Ursus, or Ursus, a name the priory documents constantly associated with the Merovingian bloodline. At Orville, not far from Stany, where Dogobert II had been assassinated some 500 years earlier, an abbey was established to the house monks. By 1108, they had mysteriously disappeared. Orval, by 1131, had become one of the fiefs owned by Saint Bernard. In 1188, the Order of Sion is said to have modified its name, adopting the one which is allegedly obtained to the present, the Priory of Sion. As a kind of subtle, it is said to have adopted the curious name Ormus. This subtitle, was supposedly used until 1306, a year before the arrest of the French Templars. The device for Ormus involved a kind of aristocratic or anagram, which combines a number of key words and symbols, ours meaning bearer in French, Ursus in Latin, and echo, as subsequently became apparent, of Dogobert II, Merovingian dynasty. Orm is the French for elm. Or, of course, is gold, and the M forms the frame including the other letters. It is not only an M, but also the astrological sign for Virgo, connoting, in the language of medieval iconography, Notre Dame. Mysterious Abbey of Orville, where our research suggests that the Priory of Sion may have had its inception. The signature of the Priory of Sion incorporated the sign of Virgo with the four letters Horus, which stood for Horus, and the form of a cross. Consider the device of the Priory of Sion, namely the name Ormus and its glyph. The glyph is as follows. What is this? Ormos, that is. Virgo and Horus. What is Horus? Horus is a corrupted form of Horus and is used in Crowley's fifth degree ritual for the Oto, or OTO. His Ros Kros, or ritual, includes an analysis of the key word, much like in the Golden Dawn Adaptus Minor in ceremony. Only IAO stands for not for Isis, Apophis, and Osiris, but Iachus, or Iacchus, or Asai, and Aris. According to the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Ormus evolved into the order of the Priory of Sion, of the Rosy Cross. One intended to see in Ormus the origins of the so-called Rosy Cross, or Rosicrucians. In 1188, the Priory of Sion is said to have adopted a second subtitle. In addition to Ormus, it is said to have called itself the Order of the Rosy Cross, or the Order of the Rosy Cruz. The name allegedly adopted by the Priory of Sion between 1188 and 1307. Charles Nador, the Grand Master of the Priory of Sion from 1801 to 1884, averred that the secret order presided over a global network of secret societies. There are a great many of secret societies in operation. Nador declares, but there is one, he adds, that it takes precedence over all others. That in fact it presides over all others. And according to Nador, the Supreme Secret Society is called the, oh damn it, I can't say that out loud. At the same time, however, he speaks of the oath which forbids me to make them known under their social name. Nevertheless, this is the hint of Sion. And if you guys see the name here, for those of you all who are watching on YouTube, in 1099, the Merovingian Jews, in collusion with Pope Urban II, also a Merovingian, launched the First Crusade. In an article titled "The Merovingian Infiltration of the Christian World Through Monasticism," confirms what we have long suspected, that Urban was not the first Merovingian pope, but the sixth in a succession of French Merovingian popes beginning in 999 AD. In 1088, Urban II, French prior of Cluny, Reformed Benedictines, become the Pope. Urban was of the Uids family, not only the name of the king of the Franks, but the Uids, who ruled from 888 to 898, and considered one of the antecedent kings of the Capetian House of France, but also the name the royal Capetian line of Burgundy, the great-grandson of Hugh Capet, Uids I, the Red of Burgundy, who was seated in 1079. 9 years before Urban Uids became Pope. And Uids the Red acceded in that specific year because his brother, Huey I of Burgundy, had abdicated to become the prior of Cluny. Now something is very amiss here. Is this just a coincidence? Both were sons of Henry Burgundy, who married Sybil of Barcelona. Henry was of son Robert I of Burgundy, who was the son of Hugh Capet. Barcelona, home of their mother, was part of the Spanish March connected to the Septimania, and here too, the Duke of Aquitaine in 1012, was Uids of Aquitaine. Hopefully I'm not butchering these words. Aquitaine. Let's say that. Aquitaine and Aquitaine, Septimania, are extremely significant. It happens that Septimania is exactly where the Jesus Magdalene hearsay flourished, and where there was a large population of Catholic Jews who were given independent status by Pepin, Carolingian, the king. Hence their own kings ruled as the seed of the royal house of David, each acknowledged as the king of the Jews, most famous of who was Guillaume de Gaulle, the Prince of the Orange. Confusing this issue, these kings also claimed to be of Merovingian descent, but not confusing when one realizes that Jesus was of the house of David and Mary Magdalene was from the town of Magdala, 4 miles from Tiberias, found by Herod Antipas, who was an Edomite descendant of Asua, with whom Benjaminites married. Additionally, Absalom, David's son, who pulled a coup d'état on his own father in an attempt to take his throne, had a rebel following who would have joined the Benjaminite cause. Absalom died when his long hair got caught in the branches in the forest during the coup. In the Merovingian dynasty of the French kings were the long-haired kings. The details of the separate kingdom of Septiminia were erased from the books of history, but the descendant of bloodlines were apparently see if that works. The details of the separate kingdom of Septiminia were erased from the history books, but the descendant bloodlines were apparently the heretical royal bloodlines, as Dukes of Aquitaine, Dukes of Lorraine, Dukes of Guise, Counts of Barcelona, Counts of Toulouse, Counts of Aravengia, Aravern. I'm leaving it there. Arvern. Let's do that. Alvern. Counts of Alvern, Counts of Razaz, and it was precisely a Duke of Aquitaine who founded Cluny. Thus, Septiminia now became extremely important, for now Urban II, descendant of the Uids of Septiminia and Cluny prior, is the Pope who will call the First Crusades, resulting in the crowning of the direct lineal descendant of Guillaume du Guesclin, named Godfrey de Bouillon, Duke of Lorraine, as King of Jerusalem. Holy fucking crap, y'all. See, I told you I didn't want to read this one. I could see all the names before I read it, and I was like, oh, no. Aquitaine. I think I'm saying that right. Could be off a little bit. Aquitaine is so named on maps of 2nd century Roman Empire, comprised then the whole area from Languedoc, southern France, to Puteaux and Anjou, or Septimina, was the area that was later known as the Languedoc. I think I'm going to leave it there because there's still like 4 pages left of this one chapter. And I feel like because of all the names, I'm lost now. Like I need to stop and figure out who the fuck all these people were before I continue, so that way I can formulate in my brain not only how to pronounce their names correctly, but so that way I understand where they fit in this story. I think we'll call it there. Anyways, I'll leave the floor open for a couple of minutes if you guys have anything, you guys and gals. If you all are listening in on TikTok, we appreciate the love and the support. We're almost at 12,000 followers, I believe, now. Over the past consecutive couple of months, we've just been here in an attempt to show you guys all the books in the collection of the Library of Awakening that we've accumulated over the past, let's say, 6 years inside the CyberX Discord. So we hope that you all have enjoyed. If there's nothing else for you all in the chat, then blessings to you all, love and light, and I'll see you guys in the next video breakdown. Everybody take it easy.